All right, let's go watch this debate.
Joining me now,
No, there's already been a senator who called for a ceasefire.
Regev, senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was previously Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom. Mark Regev, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Let's start with the tragic situation. Pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the tragic situation of the hostages. Hostage taking, a clear war crime by Hamas, and those hostages, of course, need to be released. Are we any closer to the release of any more hostages?
We surely hope so. You know, Hamas, as you've reported, has kidnapped some 240 people. Unfortunately, today we found the body near the Shifa hospital of one of the hostages, a woman from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her name is Yehudit Weiss. She was 65 years old, a mother of 5. And so she's no longer a hostage. She was dead. The information we have is when she was...
How'd she die?
Was taken into captivity, when she was abducted by Hamas, she was alive. We've now found her body. It was one of the results of the military operation today. Of course, getting the hostages out remains one of the focal points of our military operation. And we believe that by expediting the military pressure on Hamas, we're actually getting closer to the release of hostages.
So was it a mistake in hindsight, and that's tragic news to hear about this poor woman, was it a mistake for Prime Minister Netanyahu, your boss, to have reportedly turned down a deal at the start of this conflict that would have seen Hamas free women, the elderly, kids, in exchange for a 5-day ceasefire? Isn't that why so many of the families of the hostages are angry with your government?
Sorry, Mehdi, that's just disinformation. There was not a real option for a deal before the ground operation. It was looked at seriously, but Hamas put nothing on the table that could be worked with. And so that's just not correct to say there was an option. We might have an option now for a deal. I can't tell you for sure. We might have an option because the military pressure on Hamas is maybe making Hamas understand that if they want a temporary ceasefire, they need to release hostages. Without that, we're not going to have a temporary ceasefire. So we're hitting Hamas hard, and maybe the military pressure will force them to consider how they look at the hostages. Look, we can't expect...
They're murdering innocent civilians, you mean? And Hamas, what he's saying is Hamas has more of a care for civilians than the IDF does.
Expect them to release hostages because they're suddenly going to become humanitarians, right, Mehdi? They're obviously not. They're brutal, vicious terrorists, and they'll only release hostages when they're they'll only release hostages when they're forced to do so.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the military pressure. We are nearly 6 weeks into this bombing campaign and ground invasion. The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 11,000 people in Gaza, including a record number of children. Let me finish my question.
No, but you can't say that. No, but you said you have to say the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza.
I don't have to say what you asked.
Now, Israeli media is reporting that the number killed is far higher.
Me to say more than 4,000 kids.
True.
They say
that's true. You don't deny that, Mehdi. You don't deny that it's the Hamas controlled.
I'm not
and
denying.
the health ministry is controlled by Hamas.
Let me finish my question.
You can, but please tell the viewers the truth. That information is provided by Hamas.
Okay, and that information, we'll come back to that information, but you've got dead Gazans. The American government say maybe more than 11,000. You've got a record number of journalists killed, according to the CPJ, a record number of UN workers killed, according to the UN, and yet Hamas still exists, is still capable of firing rockets into Israel, still has the hostages. You haven't found their big base under the Shifa hospital either. Your critics say that shows this war is a failure.
I would argue that's all incorrect, Mehdi. We're hitting Hamas hard and they're feeling the pain. We just discussed that a moment ago. Why they may be now considering seriously a hostage release. It's not because, as I said, they've become humanitarians. It's because they're under a very, very massive military pressure. Look, this operation is not one that we wanted, obviously. This war was forced upon Israel in the terrible attack of October 7th, and we are fighting back, and we will destroy Hamas. We'll dismantle their military machine and we'll take apart their political control of Gaza. That's good for Israel for obvious reasons. We don't have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the border and killing our people and butchering our children in the middle of the night. But it's ultimately also good, and I hope you agree with me, it'll be good for the people of Gaza who deserve better than this terrible authoritarian extreme Hamas regime.
The people of Gaza are still alive. As I say, more than 11,000 people dead, reported dead, 4,000 children.
Why are you posting
Hamas's numbers?
You say Hamas's numbers. I should point out, just pull up on the screen, in the last two major Gaza conflicts, 2009 and 2014, the Israeli military's death tolls matched Hamas's health ministry death toll. So, and the
Oh, whoops. Oh, whoops. So the Gazan health ministry has been reliable in the death tolls in the past.
UN human rights groups all agree that those numbers are credible. But look, your wider point is true.
Can I challenge that? Will you allow me to challenge that, please? Can I just challenge that? I'd like to challenge that. I'll try to be as brief as you are, sir. Those numbers are provided by Hamas. There's no independent verification. And secondly, more importantly, you have no idea how many of them are Hamas terrorists, combatants, and how many are civilians. Hamas would have you believe that they're all civilians, that they're all children. And here we have to say something that isn't said enough. Hamas, until now, we're destroying their military machine, and with that, we're eroding their control. But up until now, they've been in control of the Gaza Strip. And as a result, they control all the images coming out of Gaza. Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Is that by accident or is that because Hamas?
That's because the IDF doesn't have any pictures to share, I guess. Why don't you guys release pictures of dead Hamas fighters? You're doing a ground invasion. Shouldn't you be fighting them? Shouldn't you have some pictures? And it's pretty easy for Hamas to release photos. By the way, it's not just Hamas, it's independent journalists, it's social media bloggers, it's TikTokers, it's regular Gazans. Not just Hamas. It is news reporters from Al Jazeera, which they've targeted. More journalists have died in this Gaza attack than any other conflict in the 21st century. What's going on, man? Now, I've seen some IDF videos. I saw them abusing civilians. I saw them dancing on graves. But I haven't seen a lot of successful combat.
Hamas can control the information.
You asked me a question and you said you would be brief. I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point,
they're dead,
they're the pictures Hamas wants.
But they're also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children. Oh, wow. First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Okay, here's my question for you, Mark. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We should.
By the way, this is, and in case you're wondering, and this is a definitive proof. This guy is a fascist, propagandist, liar, and he's an aider and abettor of the murder of children, and he should be prosecuted as a accomplice, and he should go to the International Criminal Court, and he should be personally held liable for the war crimes he is enabling, knowingly. This interview should be prime evidence in his war crimes trial. Denial is the final stage of genocide. And the 10 steps to genocide, cover up, and denial is the final stage.
blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe
Correct.
what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
I disagree, and I think on the important issues, look,
I disagree. Irrefutable facts of disinformation. I disagree.
I'll give you an example, Mehdi.
No,
Originally, we estimated.
No,
I'm answering your question. Allow me to answer your question. I'm answering your question directly, if you'll allow me. We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties. And now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake, we admit it.
Short on time.
Why does that give you permission? Why does that give you permission to accept Hamas's numbers? I don't understand.
I didn't ask about Hamas numbers. I said to you that your military
spokesman... you were quoting to me before Hamas numbers, Mehdi. You were quoting to me Hamas's numbers.
Because the entire UN and the human rights community and the American intelligence community on Friday said they trust those numbers. But you're dodging my question, Mark.
I'm not sure that's true.
Why did your military spokesman on Monday point to a calendar in Arabic and say these are the names of terrorists on them? That's false. Can you accept that here and now?
I'm not aware of the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image.
I mean, it's basically, this is just, I mean, and I mean this. This is Nazism. This is Nazism. He's an absolute dissembler and a knowing liar and propagandist. There's nothing short of genocide denial. We're going to take a quick break in the middle of this debate because the BBC just put out something that I wanted to show you. Fuck. Where is it? Ah, here it is.
Verify has been examining the different sources of information that we have on this. Israel describes the Al-Shifa hospital as the main headquarters for Hamas's terrorist activity. This IDF animation, posted in late October, claims to represent a Hamas tunnel system underneath the hospital. But having been inside Al-Shifa since early Wednesday, Israel's yet to produce evidence of the tunnels. It has allowed the BBC and Fox News to film at the hospital, though only locations of Israel's choice.
This is what they found.
Israel also released its own 7-minute video, which BBC Verify has analysed. A watch, visible in that video, suggests it was filmed a few hours before the BBC arrived. And this IDF video was posted, then deleted, then reposted. This time without a section referring to an Israeli soldier who'd been held hostage.
I don't know when this was used the last time.
Also in the video, we see a room with an MRI machine.
And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you'll be able to see is military equipment.
The BBC was shown the same room. And what we see in the two videos doesn't precisely match. For example, there's one gun in the IDF video, two by the time of the BBC footage. Israel has told BBC Verify this is because more weaponry and terrorist assets were discovered throughout the day.
And as always, an AK-47.
Israel also says its video is a single shot with no edits. But this appears to be an edit. We don't know the reasons for that edit, nor how significant it is. The IDF, though, says suggestions it's manipulating the media are incorrect. The IDF video also shows military equipment in other locations, though we can't verify how it came to be there. And what we see in this IDF video doesn't equate to Israel's description of Al-Shifa as an operational command center for Hamas. The US is using a different phrase, saying Al-Shifa was used as a command and control node. That implies a much smaller facility. And as Israel makes the case for this operation, Let's consider the Geneva Conventions, the foundations of the rules of war.
I mean, that is to say, quite frankly, Israel is a lying liar of lies. They bombed the largest hospital in Gaza, saying it was a Hamas command and control center, and they found no tunnels, no evidence, nothing. A couple of AK-47s and magazines spread out on a table, hidden behind an MRI machine, that if the MRI machine was ever turned on, the guns would be sucked to it by the incredibly powerful magnet. What are you talking about? There has been, so what you're saying is they've killed thousands of civilians at a hospital. And by the way, this was reported this morning that all the patients in the intensive care unit died. All the patients in the intensive care unit died. Let me see if let me show you where I got that information. Let me see here. I want to make sure that okay. This is from Jeremy Scahill from The Intercept. The director of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza told Al Jazeera 22 ICU patients died overnight. He said the hospital lost all those who were in the intensive care unit. There are 7,000 people still in the hospital. Dead bodies are piling up. The morgue is full, and there are no refrigerator trucks. Disputed claim that Israel provided incubators and said the hospital already has incubators, but needs fuel for generators to power them. Hospital staff appealed to Israeli forces to leave the hospital and were denied. He said the hospital has become a big prison. So the only country that is violating the Geneva Conventions about putting military forces in the hospital is Israel.
Yet come to even to the heart of this operation. Khan Yunis, which is in the southern part of Gaza Strip, is the real headquarters of Hamas. They have the leadership, they are hiding, they have the bunkers, they have the command positions, they have the launching pads.
It's interesting you say Khan Yunis is the command center, because for the past week we've heard the Shifa hospital was the beating heart of Hamas, and yet we haven't seen the tunnels or the weaponry.
So you have seen the weaponry, you haven't seen the leaders. But look, I don't know, there are so many fake news. It's now part of life, so everything is spread carelessly. Had you asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have told you that the center is really in Khan Yunis. We haven't yet.
So, so what I want to say is, again, if you vote for Joe Biden, you are a knowing collaborator in a genocide. If you support Joe Biden, the Democratic Party at this time, you are a supporter of genocide. You are a Nazi supporter. You are very similar to someone who voted for Hitler.
You have no
I can't read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the
incident.
Does your
spokesman read Arabic?
Hang on, I have a question, Matty. You're a journalist. Have you made a professional mistake ever? Not intentionally, but have you made a professional mistake?
Exactly, and I own up to it.
Have you made a mistake? So can you own up to the mistake? So if I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes, but there's a difference between making an honest mistake and between Hamas that deliberately exaggerates numbers to suit its propaganda purposes. There's a huge difference.
So it sounds like
it's like
hold on. You said propaganda. Can we just deal with your colleague Ophir Gendelman's tweet? It's still up 7 days later. Why has it not come down? It's a Lebanese short film. We can put it on screen. It's not Palestinians faking their own injuries. Can we own up to that mistake and take that down? Is that not propaganda?
Once again, I understand that was also a mistake.
Hugh Lamb,
And
thank you for the 10 tier one.
speak to-
Oh, that was a mistake! So they're spreading the idea that you can't trust the Palestinians to report about their number of dead. As satellite photo, here's why you shouldn't believe Israel. Is Hamas trying to lie? I'm sure they are. But here's why you don't trust Israel. Because you can look at satellite photos of the Gaza Strip. And you can see. And this is from 3 weeks ago. This is 3 weeks ago. You could see the before and you could see the after. You could see these buildings and now they're flattened. 3 more weeks of carpet bombing. You don't have to trust me. Look at the carpet bombing. Look at the Al-Shati refugee camp. Look at the carpet bombing. Yeah, those were all Gazan Hamas headquarters. These apartment buildings that they flattened and bombed. Yeah. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to believe Hamas. You don't have to believe Israel. All you need to know is there are thousands of civilians who have become, millions have become homeless. Thousands more killed. It's not my opinion. Before, after. Before, after. This is a 9/11 on every block. You lying sack of shit.
About it, if you like. I'll speak to Offer about it if you like. He's
Great.
a friend of mine and a colleague. I quite like him. He's a good man. He's actually very effective. Why is he effective?
Well,
he
he's
speaks.
a big liar. He's a big liar, like you are, you fucking lying sack of shit. And if you're wondering why I say a vote for Biden is a vote for Hitler, here is the leaked weapons that the U.S. is secretly sending to Israel. So the U.S. knows that Israel is targeting civilians and lying about hospitals that they bomb. Biden repeated the Hamas command center is below the hospital. Lie! The Biden administration has tried hard to conceal the nature and quantity of its weapons it's provided Israel for its war on Hamas. With a heavy heart that I'm out report that an internal Defense Department list of weapons has leaked. 2,000 Hellfire missiles, 30-millimeter chain gun ammunition, 5,755-meter shells for artillery, 57,000, 400 120-millimeter mortars, night optical devices, M141 shoulder fire bunker busters, officially bunker defeat munitions, the Western equivalent of Hamas RPGs that designed to engage targets at short range. 75 joint light tactical vehicles and 300 plus Timir interceptors used for Israel's Iron Dome system. So you are funding this genocide of children as these lying pieces of shit carpet bomb neighborhoods.
Effective in that tweet, Mark.
I agree. He made a mistake, but let's be clear. It's very good that we have someone who can speak Arabic in the Arab networks directly to Arab people, so they can hear Israeli opinions directly.
Appreciate
and
that.
Is amazing at that. He's very important.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I know you're short on time, much more short than me, so I'm going to keep going. Let's talk about war crimes. Human rights groups, as well as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, have accused Hamas of committing war crimes. But they've also accused Israel of war crimes in Gaza, too, which you blame on Hamas. So I have a simple question for you. If Hamas gunmen were hiding out in a school in Tel Aviv or an apartment block in Haifa, would you be okay with the Israeli Air Force dropping bombs on those buildings, leveling them, killing the innocent Israelis inside in order to get the Hamas gunmen? Would you do that?
But you're right in your question. Of course, Hamas hides behind students and children. That's their whole policy. That's why we've had the casualties we've had. Hamas deliberately embeds itself, as you said in your question, amongst civilians. The fact that they buried themselves under the Shifa hospital in Gaza City, not one hospital, but a whole series of hospitals.
And yet, there's no evidence. You've been there for days. Where's the evidence, you liar? Do you see what I mean? Oh, the headquarters wasn't Al Shifa, the former prime minister just said in the video we watched during this lie. They can't keep their lies straight. Honestly, I think it's the official Israeli policy that every spokesperson is allowed to just lie whatever they want to say. They are empowered to just lie.
With respect,
you also never answered the question.
Answering my question,
turn them into military installations.
Would you bomb?
I am answering your question.
Would you bomb schools and houses in Israel if Hamas militants were believed to be under them and kill Israeli human shields in the process?
We don't deliberately kill anyone. That's not a fair question. What we are trying to do is eliminate this threat.
Okay, would you accidentally kill Israeli human shields? I'm asking a very simple question.
We wouldn't want to accidentally kill anyone. We wouldn't accidentally, no, we wouldn't accidentally want to kill anyone.
Understood.
But can I tell you, when the West fought ISIS, when the West fought ISIS in Fallujah and in Mosul, also there, ISIS used human shields. They actually used a hospital, I believe, in Mosul. You probably know this as well as I do.
I do. And what
the West was fought, and the West was fought. But I think it's actually, I think America did the right thing. You had to defeat these brutal terrorists.
Would you apply the tactics of Gaza in Israel? It's a simple question.
We wouldn't allow them. We wouldn't allow them to take over a school in the first place. We'd send in special forces and we'd take out the.
Why don't you send in special forces to get Hamas then in Gaza? NP Sharky, thanks for gifting a sub.
Terrorists.
I know you're over on. You're out of time.
I did answer your question. Why did you say I did not answer your question? You didn't answer. I didn't answer it the way. I didn't answer it in the way you wanted me to answer it. That's the problem. I didn't answer it the way you wanted me to answer it. We would send in special forces. And we would neutralize the terrorists. That's what we've done in the past. You know we've done it that way. Yes.
Last question for you. You've got ministers in your government. I have to ask this question. Amichai Eliyahu, who said Israel should consider dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza, which would kill over 2 million people. He's still in your government. Avi Dichter, another member of your government, went on TV and said this is Gaza Nakba 2023. And your boss, Benjamin Netanyahu, invoked Amalek, which was a biblical call for killing every man, woman and child. Mark, do you understand why that cannot be heard as anything other than calls for genocide or ethnic cleansing around the world?
So will you allow me to answer?
Of course.
Number one, that minister was reprimanded by the Prime Minister, Eliyahu, and he
called for a nuclear bombing, but was allowed to keep his job. Very normal, very cool.
He was told very forthrightly, he's suspended from the government, and if he makes any statements like that again, he's fired. On the Avi Dichter, I think I actually agree with what he said. The Nakba, the tragedy that was brought upon the Palestinians in 1947-48 was because of an extreme irresponsible leadership that wasn't willing to compromise. And Hamas is doing the same thing to Palestinians in Gaza. Terrible. And if they are creating a catastrophe, it's because of Hamas. And on the third point, Amalek was known in Jewish history, and I'm sure you know this, that they attacked from behind. They killed the women and the children and the people who were sick, who couldn't walk quickly. That's why Amalek is in the Bible, is so condemned, because they attacked the innocent.
Wow. He's saying they deserved it. They deserved it to be genocided. What? Wow. A 5,000-year-old book from ancient times showing the brutality of ancient society. And he's saying, yep, genocide's good.
No, I know my... Don't tell me I don't know my Jewish history. I know my Jewish history.
Go and attack the Amalekites. Do not spare them. Put to death men, women, and children. Is that what you're doing in Gaza? That's what the Prime Minister invoked.
No. He was describing, first of all, no one in Israel is calling for women and children to be killed. On the contrary. How can you say
your Heritage Minister did. He said nuke Gaza.
No. What we have said is we're going to wipe out Hamas, and we are going to wipe out Hamas. But we make a clear distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian civilians of the Gaza Strip, who are in many ways Hamas oppresses them. Hamas might want to kill Israelis, but the way Hamas treats the civilian population of Gaza, I'm sure you yourself will admit that they deserve better than that terrible Hamas terrorist regime.
But on that note, we're out of time. Well, I'll give you one very straightforward last yes or no question for you. Joe Biden wants a two-state solution in the Middle East. He wants it sooner rather than later, he says, to get peace in the Middle East. Does your government, does Prime Minister Netanyahu support a two-state solution? Yes or no?
I think it's a time now for war. It's a time for victory. And when that's over, with Hamas defeated, with Hamas destroyed, when you've taken out the most extreme enemy of peace, that'll create room, I think, for more moderate and pragmatic voices to fill the vacuum, and that'll be good for peace.
So that's a yes or a no on a two-state solution?
I gave you a good answer, I thought.
Ambassador Mark Regev, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mehdi.
I don't think you can watch that and come away with any conclusion than that the regime in Israel is a full-blown fascist regime. Before the carpet bombing, after. Before the carpet bombing, after. Jesus Christ. Good news, chat. The LA Times, the Los Angeles Times editorial board has called for a ceasefire this morning. Editorial. Cease fire now. The killing in Gaza must stop. By the Times editorial board. It's become impossible to distinguish between Israel's decidedly non-surgical operation against Hamas militants in Gaza and the indiscriminate killing of Palestinian civilians. When so-called humanitarian pauses in the bombardment and ground operations are too brief to realistically permit innocents to flee, or where there is no place for non-combatants to go that is not also in the line of fire, such pauses are so deficient as to be meaningless. It is time for a ceasefire. It is time for the Biden administration to assert strong and sustained pressure on the government of Benjamin Netanyahu to stop attacks that have reportedly killed more than 11,000 Gazans. The world cannot stand by to witness more slaughter of civilians. They condemned Hamas, chat. Israel claims Hamas has used Shifa Hospital as a command center and weapons warehouse. Although Israeli soldiers who entered the hospital were able to produce little evidence of that, there is no reason to doubt that Hamas would treat Palestinian civilians as human shields. There is, because there's no proof. But okay, we all condemn Hamas. Everybody condemn Hamas. Condemn Hamas. But Hamas's atrocities do not justify atrocities in kind. Following Hamas's initial attack, Israel instructed the people of northern Gaza to leave their homes and made no commitment they would ever be able to return. Israel's reprisal destroyed homes and cut off power and communications, making it impossible for survivors of the bombing even to search for remains of family and neighbors beneath the rubble. Now Israel is signaling it will step up its assault into southern Gaza, into which much of the territory's population of more than 2 million have been crowded in response to warnings to flee the north. It will not be permitted to enter Egypt on Gaza's southwestern border, and they cannot enter Israel. They are trapped. Already, more children have died in Gaza in the last month than in all other conflicts around the world this year, according to Save the Children. That cruel fact is one of many that have turned world opinion against Israel and against the U.S., its chief ally and provider of most of its weapons. Consequences for both nations will last generations. The trauma inflicted on Palestinian survivors only increases the recruiting ability of Israel's enemies, whether they be Hamas, Hezbollah, or any successors bent on the destruction of Israel. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council approved a resolution calling for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses in corridors in Gaza for a sufficient number of days to allow unhindered access for agencies delivering aid. The U.S. did not vote in favor of the resolution, but importantly, it did not veto it. Still, pauses in corridors mean little if they are immediately followed by the resumption of deadly attacks. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken testified on October 31st that a ceasefire would simply consolidate what Hamas has been able to do, potentially repeat what it did another day. Neither Israel nor the U.S. has explained how Hamas can be eradicated or removed from power without an unacceptable level of civilian deaths and casualties, nor have they set forth what they intend to happen next. Israeli occupation? On his visit to Israel in the wake of Hamas's initial attack, President Biden noted that the U.S., following the terrorist attacks of September 11th, made mistakes. The statement was a clear message to Israel. Don't blunder as we did. Don't squander the goodwill of the rest of the world by killing civilians. Don't mimic your enemy's cruelty. Don't leave a power vacuum that can be filled by other, even more potent enemies. Have an exit strategy. Remaining mindful of America's mistakes, it is incumbent upon the Biden administration now to avoid complicity with Israel's. We are past the time to excuse the horror in Gaza. Biden has to press Netanyahu hard to stop the mass indiscriminate killing. That starts with a call for a ceasefire. Now, if you have any lib relatives who you might think you could get to, post this Los Angeles Times call for a ceasefire. It's not just radical, wild-eyed lefties like me. An Israeli traveler says a Chilean border official drew a penis and wrote Viva Palestina in his passport. Oh no. Oh no. Don't desecrate official government documents.